you had trouble concentrating recently? Or maybe you have thought about this idea of brain rot, being fried in the head, not having thoughts, not being able to understand things or follow things, or that concentration is really hard. So that's what today's Multispecies Digest is all about. Hi, welcome to another episode. My name is Emilia Vestalova, and I'm your host and also the author of the Multispecies Digest newsletter. Here we talk all things multi-species, more than human, nature positive, regenerative, or in essence, how do we work with nature and not against it in our day-to-day work. And today's topic was inspired a lot by my own experiences and the discussions that I have endlessly had in these 6 months. Just yesterday over lunch with a friend, we were talking about how doom scrolling impacts how we think and what we do, and how much effort it becomes to also drag our parents or loved ones out of their phones. So today, this is what we're going to talk about, I will be reading out loud the latest essay of Multispecies Digest called "Beware Brain Rot Ahead," and adding here and there some commentary about how this has unfolded, how this essay has come about, and some of the things that I was not able to include in the essay. Before we start, a couple of disclaimers. This is an AI-free podcast, so I edit and process and record and plan everything by myself. I also do a single take, so sometimes in the background you might hear some sounds or just life happening. You might also hear me misstate or mispronounce things, and I apologize for that in advance. But in this world, this is what works best for me. So let's start now with reading the essay, and it's called "Beware Brain Rot Ahead." We're about to deal with a lot more stupidity, so how do we navigate that? So, yesterday, I spent a couple of hours scrolling through reels on Instagram. Can I recall any of them? A few. Those of the Scottish football fans walking through Boston playing their bagpipes really stands out in my mind. But can you remember any of the ones that you have seen recently? Could I name my favorite meme when a friend asked me on the spot? No, it took me a couple of minutes, even though I'm on a kick right now of watching or rewatching old Cinnamon Toast Ken meme couch videos from like 2018, 19, 2020. And this weekend, I was also making a summer bingo sheet. I wanted to make and glue 30 small white rectangles onto a yellow A4 sheet to make it pretty, I've never done that before, and I had to figure out what size of rectangles I can have and how to space them out on the sheet. And my first thought was, it's a little bit tricky. And the second one was that maybe it's something I could ask AI to do for it. Third, how weird is that I, a self-proclaimed AI hater, want to outsource this task to AI, even though I'm discussing deteriorating brains with my friends at least once a month. Then there's a slew of ongoing news streams that screen time leads to distorted brain development in children, Gen Z being the first generation to be less cognitively capable than predecessors, US students graduating high school not being able to read and having deficient math skills, some below 8th grade level. Then there's invisible and rapid de-skilling in doctors using AI, seeming rise in anti-intellectualism, and social media and AI tools leading to lower cognitive developments. And with some empirical evidence, aka me and my friends noticing that we are getting intellectually lazy and dumber, for the lack of a better word, this is what I want to talk about today. There are a few more disclaimers, so to say, as we go forward. The first one being that if you have any questions, I'm continuing to work on the podcast and on the newsletter. And some of you might have some questions about nature positive, or how do I do this? How do I apply this in my work? If you have any of those, there is a form. It's also linked in the show notes for this episode, that you can ask your question, and it can be, I will answer it, or it's likely to be answered in one of the upcoming things in Multispecies Digest. Also, if you are a subscriber to the newsletter, both and also this podcast, so from now on you'll only receive the newsletter in your email. I'll not email out the podcast episodes, and you can find the episodes on the podcast tab in Substack. And also, if you want notifications that something that is uploaded, then please subscribe on Spotify and YouTube, and those links are also below. Official disclaimers are 3. First one is this is human written, and the same, it's human produced. I do not use AI writing in producing any of my posts or any materials for the posts. Second is that all views are my own and do not reflect those of my employers or other affiliated organizations. And third is that Multispecies Digest is not peer reviewed, and the things that I say do not constitute scientific theories or findings, and perspectives can change as new information emerges. This podcast is also based on a basic premise, and if you have already heard it before, you can skip forward a couple minutes, and there's also the timestamps in the description. But the basic idea is that we're living in a multi-species world. Humans, our creations, our lives and businesses are deeply entangled with the natural world, with all its creatures, processes, systems, and landscapes. We're directly and indirectly connected, so we, it's humans and nature, through flows of materials, electrical energy, heat, nutrients, as well as experiences, emotions, chemical and physical reactions, and even quantum fields. Humans and nature are inseparable, no matter how hard our education and religion, economy, and personal egos might tell us otherwise. And we as humans need to relearn how to live and do business in a way that sees the interconnections, acknowledges physical and other limitations, and drastically reduces the negative impact on nature. If you want to learn more of the basics, you can check out the earlier essays of Multispecies Digest, earlier episodes, or then watch an introductory lecture on YouTube. And you'll find all of those links in the description below. But back to the essay. So, accepting the risk of being perceived as snobby and intellectualist, I must admit that stupidity, and that's my own stupidity and stupidity of others, as well as the devastating impacts that it already has and will have on our ability to function as society, it scares the shit out of me. And I'm sorry for using the S word, but I feel that it's important to include, and I'm quite passionate about this topic, and I've been thinking about it for a couple of years now, but these, let's say, 6 to 12 months have really stood out to me on how much people's brains seem to be really, really fried. Of course, I'm biased. I'm a researcher. I don't work in academia anymore, but I used to work and teach at the university. I hold a doctoral degree. I am an intellectual, or a wannabe intellectual, and I have these weird and never-ending thoughts. But yeah, I have this belief that our society highly benefits from critical thinking, knowledge, and intellectual capacity of people to understand and learn about the world around them. And I'm highly aware that others might and do emphasize other things, like doing and pursuing change, doing business, having embodied experiences in the body, etc. But for me, it's much about our ability to think. Otherwise, how are we to communicate, solve problems, address climate change, make meaningful social progress, reduce inequality, etc.? And still, time and time again, I catch myself feeling dumber. I catch myself discussing with friends about feeling brain fried and brain rotted, empty in the head, struggling to do things that used to come with ease. And it really has motivated me to write this essay and to make this episode. So let's start with covering kind of the basics. We start with what is brain rot, and then we'll talk about in a bit where does it come from. But brain rot, most of you have probably come across this term before. It's part of the internet slang and the vocabulary of the youth, and also already not so youth. As someone who categorize myself as semi-chronically online, I have come across this term before a lot, and I assume that you might have as well. This Oxford Dictionary Word of the Year in 2024. It was a shortlister in 2024. So brain rot is broadly used to refer to three things. First, it's a type of content. It's fast-paced, low-quality, repetitive, often emotionally charged, and something that does not require much effort to consume. So if you think especially about TikTok Reels, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, just kind of this fast-paced, I think often it's video content. I assume it might also be text or images, but mostly video content that kind of you just consume, that goes into your brain, and then potentially you just think back and you're like, oh, I have no idea. I've been scrolling for 45 minutes and I have no idea what I've just seen. So that's the first part, it's the content. The second aspect of brain rot is the behavior. It's behavior where a person who likely compulsively and without awareness consumes a lot of online media, but also multitasks and avoids thinking to an extent that internet can enter online speech, like you've heard like the skivity or 6-7, even brain rot, chronically online. I think a lot of my speech when I speak or write these essays also includes this kind of internet slang. But the behavior of the brain rot is that you watch a lot of things, you doom scroll, you might doom scroll for hours on end without it really realizing it. And this behavior also makes it harder to engage with non-brain rot content like books or films. So if you are exposing yourself through your behavior through a lot of this fast-paced content, then actually sitting down and focusing on reading a book or watching a film, even listening to a long podcast episode, which this one is probably going to be pretty long. But yeah, consuming long form content, and also things that are not content like classical books or academic books or something like that is becoming harder. And then the third aspect of brain rot is lowered cognitive ability. And this is the part that I want to focus in today's episode. So not the content, not the behavior, but the actual lowered cognitive ability. And in essence, lowered cognitive ability or brain rot is all about decreased ability to think, to process information, to build and process arguments and remember things. For some, it's about decrease in ability, yes. So for example, for me, I feel like maybe 6-10 years ago, even 9 months ago, I might have had better ability to think, and now it has decreased. But then for others, like children, it can also be about never reaching their full or even decent cognitive level due to external circumstances, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But kind of a lot of exposure to iPads, if you've heard the term iPad kids, or digital technology in the classroom, where what is being done, how these kids learn, how they are being raised, impacts the level to which they can develop their cognitive ability. And as a caveat, of course, there are also disabilities, learning challenges, etc. But I don't want to categorize them as brain rot, so I'm excluding them as part of this argument, and maybe that's something for another day. But a person with brain rot or with lowered or underdeveloped cognitive ability, or maybe I would argue also learned or forced cognitive laziness. Such a person might struggle to focus on maintain concentration, linked to being distracted, forgetting things, not being able to make decisions or perform complicated tasks. Person might also might find it challenging to follow and understand conversations, presentations, longer texts, hard to remember recent events, remember what was read or said, hard to understand complex or even not so complex instructions. It might also be hard for this person to plan own work or life, to handle multiple tasks or requirements at once. And then also on from the emotional side, kind of emotionally regulate to navigate frustrations, worries, sadness. That might come hard. It might be hard to think deeply and broadly about a topic and also navigate situations that require deep and prolonged cognitive effort. Here are some of my students I used to teach in a classroom. It comes to mind where I don't know for sure, but I would speculate that sometimes some of my students would actually really struggle to maintain cognitive effort of learning for a prolonged period of time. And being a teacher on the other side, it's really tricky because, how do you navigate someone whose actual cognitive capability has been affected? And again, this is me wildly speculated. I don't know the situations of these students. This is just how I interpreted some of the things that were happening in my classrooms. But yeah, also person with brain rot might find it hard to build or find novel or relevant solutions, instead relying on quick superficial ones, something that comes easy with thinking. Also would be hard to spot attempts to deceive, aka falling into traps of simplistic and unrealistic explanations like conspiracy theories, populist politics, etc. And then as final one, challenges to perform own cognitive labor and consequently demanding others to do it for them. So feeling entitled to easy and smooth solutions and experiences at the expense of others' mental labor. This sounds like a nightmare to me. I don't know how it sounds for you, but to me this sounds nightmarish, both for myself. I really have been thinking a lot about how devastating is, or what a life could be like if I didn't have a certain level of brain rot. But also having to deal with others, and especially while trying to bring multi-species and thinking and doing into this world. So where does it come from? Where do all these negative impacts and lowered cognitive ability comes from? We already talked about brain rot content and brain rot behaviors, this compulsive desire to consume the content, but there's also kind of other things that we want to explore. So in the essay I write that I don't want to restrict myself only to cognitive decline due to social media use, through them TikToks or Insta Reels, YouTube Shorts, that are for sure melting our brains. But in my opinion, there are many causes, and there are more causes than just social media. Some more recent and short term, like others have been around for a while, even decades. And before we get into it and we start discussing where it comes from, I would really ask you to think. Please keep in mind that first, I'm not a cognitive scientist nor a brain specialist, so these are my opinions as a researcher, as a human who is alive and consumes media, reads books, and tries not to lose her own brain. But I'm not a scientist in this area. Second, most of the things that are I will list further down and we'll discuss, they come also with invaluable positives. Even social media comes with such great positives and opportunities and options for connection. So the things that I'm going to talk about, they're not just good or just bad, but it's important to know that they might have a connection to how our brain functions. And then the third one, that with some of these things, it might be also unclear what came first, the chicken or the egg. So does the activity cause the brain rot? Or then does having brain rot actually lead to doing the behaviors or activities more. So which one is it? I do not know. Maybe some of you do. So then leave your opinion in the comments. But based on everything I've seen, read, and observed, here are some of the places that I think brain rot might be coming from. First one is already mentioned, excessive social media use. So excessive social media use, especially flashy, emotionally charged, scrollable content, the doom scrolls, the quick dopamine, the social media sites that have been designed to be addictive. Like yesterday, I literally had to turn back off my phone into grayscale mode because I have noticed that the sites that I use, or even just the phone, my brain is so hooked to the bright colors. Like it really, literally brings me joy just to look at bright, colorful things on my screen. So there's a lot of things that are made to suck us in. But yeah, there's plenty of evidence that excessive social media use is horrible for the brain. Then second would be extensive use of digital tools. Our lives are filled with emails, apps, smartphones, and also for some of you, some of us, I don't have these, but smart fridges and AI assistants. We are all constantly interacting and managing a digital reality, which from what I read this year, seems to be destroying our skills that build and maintain our brains. So of course, when we the basic premise is that when we interact with digital technology, for example, we scroll with the finger, it uses very different pathways or less pathways potentially in our brain than compared to, for example, writing by hand. Or writing by hand engages our brain in a different way than typing on a keyboard. So by extensively using digital tools, digital technology, it is impacting our brains and builds our brains differently. So writing by hand, drawing, crafting, talking with people in person, navigating social interactions. These are some of the things that we might be losing out, or we are losing out because we use so much digital technology. And if this interests you, I can recommend Kristen Rosen's book, The Extinction of Experience. It's quite nicely describes the connection between the digital world and what happens in our brains. And there's also even evidence that, for example, noise cancelling headphones are damaging for our brain's ability to process sound. So a lot of tech is actually impacting our brain, not just social media and not just doom scrolling. Third one would be digital multitasking. So having two or more things running at the same time. So if you have ever done that, you're watching Netflix and scrolling on your phone at the same time, or then you're listening to podcasts while answering emails or doing work assignments while you're physically or digitally attending a meeting. I think all of us have done those things, and I wager to say that it might actually feel like a cognitive achievement, like, hey, look at me, I can do all of these things at the same time, I'm so smart, look at me, I can do two things at the same time. And I'm saying this only because I remember doing that, and 4 months ago I had to make a cognitive effort, like a very distinct effort, to forbid myself to multitask on two things at the same time, because I felt like it was just straining my brain and I couldn't focus on either of the things, even though in my head I was like, oh no, I totally can, it's totally doable. Things got easier once I stopped doing double tasking. But so these double activities, they are eroding our brains and our ability for deep concentration, and brain's capacity to process, store our experiences and also thoughts. The fourth, in my opinion, would be instant availability of information. So back in the day, and this is me again being geriatric Amelia, back in my day. But we used to, like, getting information and retaining information required cognitive effort, like remembering things, facts, travel routes, friends' phone numbers. We had to think about information and learn things or memorize things. And now it's just a few clicks away. And even, for example, in schools, Oftentimes I've heard people say, well, oh, you're like, you don't have to write this down, or you don't have to remember this, you will find these slides in my courses, or that's the online platform that my old university used to use. So like everything is just a click away, so you are exposed to it, but you don't actually need to include the cognitive effort of working through it or remembering it. So why work with our brain when we can just have Google and a trillion apps and websites that will solve our real and imaginary problems in an instant. So yeah, I think this instant availability of information is making us more cognitively lazy. The fifth one would be use of AI. And even though I say that I'm anti AI, and I do see some interesting research based applications of AI, but already once I had published this, I was thinking, yeah, but I do use AI because I do enjoy reading the summary on top of the Google search page. And now I had to switch to DuckDuckGo because I was like, okay, this is not good. I don't want to redo this. But I think that conversations with chatbots, AI summaries at the top of search engines, and most of the AI output that I've seen, especially being an expert in multi-species topics or design, the output is sloppy, but it's so quick and easy. It's kind of like McDonald's for the brain, and it's a fabulous technology to outsource thinking to the point where our own brains become unable to put two and two together. And I was about to say, oh, I don't really believe in conspiracy theories, but with some of the things that have been coming out lately, there's questions. But I saw a reel on Instagram of people talking of how the new conspiracy theory related to AI is that people or companies want us to use AI to a point where our brains deteriorate and they can sell back cognition to us in a monthly subscription form, so as monthly subscription to Claude or ChatGPT or something like that. And yeah, on one hand it's kind of crazy, out of realm, not really in the realm of possibility, but at the same time maybe there's like a nugget of truth to it, because use of AI can really deteriorate our brains. Okay, moving forward, because I'm taking so long. But sixth one would be reduce friction in the lifestyle of convenience in the Western world or in the cities, kind of a upper middle class, even lower classes. We have succeeded at building lifestyles that are convenient, smooth, and easy. Then where things happen in a click of a button because someone somewhere else has made the cognitive effort to think things through, and so we don't have to. And here's the having worked in human-centered design and service design, yeah, that's that cognitive effort of a click of a button still needs to be done. It's just done by someone else. So in my opinion, that has created a group of people who perceive cognitively challenging things as failures of a system and not as an opportunity to be a thinking adult. And I've discussed this in a previous Multispecies Digest essay called Convenience at the Cost of Connection, and you'll find the link to that in the show notes. The seventh would be use of digital tools and unhelpful education strategies at schools. So the digital tools like computers and iPads and digital boards that were introduced into at all levels of education have proven, or have, it seems that they are ineffective. Now Sweden's trying to steer back to digital free education. Denmark's doing the same, and then there's education researchers. This particular thing that I read was from Stanford University, and I've linked it also down below. So researchers are starting to find that technology might be making education worse. But we have already raised a whole or one and a half, maybe two generations of children with digital tools. And likely we have shaped and capped their cognitive abilities for the rest of their lives, or this for the rest of their lives. I have questions about. I don't know, but that would be my speculation. And we have two more. So seventh would be iPads as babysitters. As society, we have also used technology on like the smallest of our children. Coco Melon and Baby Shark come to mind on all these crazy looking modern children's cartoons, fast paced, really brain rotty. And some research has been coming out as of late that these tools like iPads can negatively impact brain and cognitive development. iPads have seem to have created hit kids with huge behavioral problems, and it's unclear whether these impacts can be mitigated and reversed by all this tech, at least in the US, because most of the things that I have seen about it come from the US. Maybe that's because that's where my social media bubble is located, but along with other factors, of course, that tech for kids seems to have created a generation that is a nightmare to deal with for educators as well. So it's not only that maybe they're cognitively challenged due to brain rot, but then also because of it, they are unable to participate in classroom work and in school well, kind of exacerbating and deepening the problem. And the last one would be the impact of COVID pandemic. Pandemic happened. Many of us had the vid, and there are some rumblings around how the infection could damage not only lungs but also our brains. And I had COVID a couple of times, and I had brain fog for months after my first infection. I think at least 4 months, 5 months before I could actually go back into doing work. I am for sure, and I have also discussed it with some friends that since, I don't know, 3 years ago, that I'm not as intellectually sharp as I was before having it. And there is some research that suggests that having COVID leaves lasting change on the brain and not towards the positive side. Plus, we were all cooped up at home, not too exposed to external stimuli and glued to our gadgets, screens, reels. TikTok became huge during that time. I do think that COVID played a role in this. There's other causes, of course, to declined cognitive ability. So that would be poor nutrition, lack of exercise, aging, doing the same thing over and over again. So that leaves out your brain. You're not building any new neurons, also not learning new skills. But maybe I would not necessarily apply them to the brain rot category. So I'll keep them out for now, or this essay would be 300 pages long, and this podcast episode would be 3 hours. But maybe that's something also that can be further than explored in this multi-species space. Now, let's shift gears and talk about how does brain rot impact multi-species work. And I think that sadly quite a lot. I think there's a potential for it to really impact for us multi-species practitioners, those who we want to rethink how the world works. We want to work with nature. We want to include nature in decision making. We maybe want to steer society so that it transitions, so that businesses account for nature, policymakers to everyday citizens, so that kind of everything starts considering nature more. So when I look at the list of challenges a person with brain rot faces, I feel really uneasy. I'd say scared even, and with a distinguishable hint of pessimism. In my experience, multi-species work requires a lot of mental capacity to rethink, to reflect, to observe on thinking and doing, to learn new facts and approaches, to apply new knowledge into your own work, or maybe when you work on projects, or explaining to clients, explaining to peers, explaining to yourself, and without having someone else to pre-digest it for us. Multi-species work is a lot about navigating human relationships, facing own frustrations, and then also navigating the frustrations, anger, apathy of others. So impaired cognitive ability or brain rot, be there for a short period of time or for forever, can, and I think it already does, impact us as practitioners. So also us, the people that we work with, and what and how we need to do or can do in our projects. There's many things that a person who has brain rot struggles with. Just as quick recap: focusing, maintaining conversations, following focusing and maintaining concentration, following conversations, presentations, longer texts, remembering events, remembering what was said, understanding instructions, planning things, handling multiple requirements, thinking deeply and for long periods of time, also building novel and non-obvious solutions, etc. So if we try, if I in my work, my brain, I apply that to the struggles, so linking the struggles of the brain rotted, including myself, and the multi-species work, a bit of a grim picture arises for me. And I know it might be a bit of an exaggeration, but I hope you bear with me for a moment so we can explore what might actually be the implications of brain rot on multi-species. So let's start with practitioner, because I could envision the practitioners, us, and also our human participants, our clients, struggling to focus and concentrate on work, on the project, on learning new knowledge, and that I think will impact how rapidly and to what depth multi-species relearning and transformation could happen. So just the fact that we need more effort to even do this work, without even going into the nitty gritty things, but just the concentration, that it would be so much effort to keep the concentration. Another aspect that I see is that us practitioners and people we work with, knowingly and unknowingly, would lean towards obvious solutions, like the "we have always done it like this" approaches, or "well, this would be easier" actions, leaning towards preconceived notions, existing solutions, simplistic views, which don't necessarily address the issues, but they would make us feel good and seem great, because we don't have to struggle with the thinking. Like, we do not have to put in the cognitive effort, or we need to put in less cognitive effort. So I suspect that if thinking makes us tired, and we will find ways not to do it. So in the boardroom, in project meetings, in our daily works, in our learning. So even just, oh, well, let me go and I'm exploring this topic. Let me go and use the Google AI summary at the top of the search as the truth, and not really explore or understand whether that summary is actually giving me correct information. So currently, most of obvious solutions do not necessarily align with multi-species perspectives. So they're human-centered, profit-driven, often colonial, coercive, and illogical. But I think if we continue, or as brain rot continues, it might be much harder cognitively to avoid these obvious things, avoid this, oh, we have always done it like this, and rethink, reconfigure, reimagine. We need brains to do that. Then another, and I think this is a big one, is humans, and here I would mean a lot our project participants, also the general public, maybe also our peers and clients, struggling to follow input. That would be text, images, videos, talks, presentations. So struggling to follow input that can guide the work, or would be crucial to understand before building a solution. So if or proposing policy, deliberating about future, I anticipate that practitioners might be wasting time preparing materials that go unread, unviewed, or misunderstood, and also that it would be needed to just continuously simplify the message, information, and the complexity, because there's a lot of complexity in multi-species work, to get it across. But then for me, it's like, how far is too far? How much simplification is too much simplifications? How much relevant data can you fit in a real size container? Does everything need to be translated into the brain slop content? And I suspect that the demand for someone else to provide input at any cost, so that we don't have to think, also might grow, so that we as multi-species practitioners can be on the receiving end, feeling the pressure to do mental labor for others, being accused that we have not done enough, prepared enough, made it simple enough, so that regardless of what we do, because people on the receiving end have brain rot, it's hard for them to understand what we're trying to get across. But we could also be, as practitioners, the ones who are demanding cognitive labor from others, like being angry that we didn't learn much from an expensive course, but even though, is it the course or is it our ability to understand the course? Or maybe that an expert is not dumbing down things enough for us, or a writer in a book not giving us direct instructions how to apply the ideas from the book in our specific niche work. And maybe this frustrates me a little bit because as a teacher who has taught, I have seen or I have felt this experience that regardless of how much you do and try, the people, some people will not understand, and then the frustration of just being like, or that you explain something and then someone goes, oh, well, but how do you exactly apply this in my work, because you didn't tell me that. And it's like, well, that's your job to think about. So I think this kind of translation between input or thinking of other people, materials created, books, ideas, thoughts, activities, and how people understand it, and at the intersections there's the brain rot. Like, okay, how do we navigate this? Because like, how much one side needs to change so that the other side understands, I don't know, it's a little bit frustrating. Then I also see that in multi-species work, that us as practitioners, and then also our participants or project partners, struggling to understand instructions and or plan our work, so that there would be a need for someone to guide the work at every step of the way, needing someone there to steer and make sure we are not screwing up. And this idea comes from, I was reading this quite a long Reddit thread written where American teachers, so the US teachers, are sharing their struggles, and also teachers, university professors, and people who hire interns or teach interns in once they're hired in the workplace. And they were explaining how they have started to notice that generations that enter into the classroom or the workplace, you can walk through them through instructions, that you can teach them what to do. They have written instructions and kind of simplified step-by-step instructions, and that still people can't follow them. Or that if they're told that, well, you're at a point A and you need to get to point B, but you're the one who needs to figure out how to get there, that people are not able to do that. Or maybe not able, but they need to be extensively pushed and guided to actually do that figuring out. So like, they do have the capacity, but their immediate reaction is like, well, no, but you haven't told me how to get there. So I don't know how I'm going to do that, or how I'm going to achieve that. And I think that has a potential of being a huge problem. Also, because the big problem is that we don't have multi-species guides, in the sense like, we are all pretty much figuring it out. There's no preconceived notions, or then I suspect we might get a lot of like fake gurus that pretend they know what they're doing and steering people God knows where, and likely it's to line their own pockets, or exercise abusive control, or get free labor, etc. Or then maybe we'll get, again, like in design thinking, this slew of canvas and toolkits and rigid processes, and oh, let me go to a 2-day course and now I have mastered design thinking, or multi-species thinking, or multi-species doing. And there's just be, I suspect there will be an abundance of like people and work, materials, tools that make people feel good, but then don't actually like work, or oversimplify things just because we don't have the cognitive ability to actually plan work or follow instructions. Anyways, the last one would be related to emotional intelligence, and that would be dealing with outbursts of anger, frustration, boredom, and apathy. Like, how do you manage a participant or workshop participant, for example, who stares at a ceiling the whole time, the whole workshop, and does not want to engage like at all? I've had that experience as a teacher in the classroom, when student would just, or several students would just sit at a table where they need to work with others, and just like this, stare for 2.5 hours at the ceiling. Like, how do you deal with that? I guess, of course, exaggeration. I hope we all get willing participants in all the work that we do, but what happens if we do? And we already have issues also with emotional intelligence of people. When adults have temper tantrums, they start bullying coworkers or neighbors, and then I suspect that brain rot might actually exacerbate this, make it worse. And also, how do we as practitioners deal with our own emotional landscape, our frustration, our anger, our boredom, or our apathy, our own brain rot? How do we navigate that? I understand that I might be exaggerating a bit, or I'm going in these like hypothetical directions that I don't yet have evidence to really be like, well, this is how it works. But I would speculate that these are some of the ideas that will happen. And I'm trying to process things as a researcher, as a writer, as a practitioner. And maybe this topic is also quite close to my heart because I haven't been the smart kid. It's weird to discuss that because I'm like, oh, I'm just being egoistical and showing off. But being intellectually capable has been part of my life journey. And yes, I'm stuck up, but it is truly hard to navigate life with people who have a very different intellectual capacity than yourself. And maybe I would add intellectual and cognitive capacity, maybe two different things, but in this case I think they're referring to the same, or pointing same directions. But so it's hard if you have two differently capable people trying to work together, while dealing with, let's say, negative attitudes from both sides of the table. Because if you have lower cognitive or intellectual capability, smarter people will piss you off, and vice versa. So I just keep asking myself, is multi-species just for intellectually capable? And how can it be accessible for those of us dealing with brain rot? And should it be accessible to everyone? And if yes, then how do we navigate that? How do we navigate this brain rot elephant in the room? And I have some ideas, and we're now going to talk about that. So how can we prepare for the brain rot era? And I don't know, of course, all the impact the brain rot can or will have, and that what impact it can have on how we as practitioners navigate our work. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm just looking into things too much. But I think as a field, as a movement, and as individuals and collective of practitioners, I think we can start preparing or just even exploring these ideas and building particular skills and perspectives. And I have a couple of thoughts and so much more questions than answers. The first perspective would be that we need to, or being aware of our cognitive capacity and levels of brain rot is important. So vital, in my opinion, to be aware of our own capabilities and also spot the changes over time. Though I'm like, oh, is it a catch-22? I like that. It's the second time I used this in today's episode, but like, would brain rot make it harder for you to spot that you have brain rot? So if you're trying to track if you have brain rot, then increasing brain rot, does it make it harder for you to notice that you have brain rot? How do we track changes, the impact of brain rot? And throughout like your life, how were you doing? How was I doing? What might be your baseline? How did you do in school? What came easy? What was hard? Hasn't been harder to learn recently? How do you feel when you have to deeply think about something, plan something new? Has it become harder over time? I think that's something that I'm asking myself. Now I'm asking also you. And also, does your brain hurt while thinking? Because mine does when I write the essays, and maybe less during the podcast, but writing and reading hurts my brain physically. And is that normal? The second aspect would be preserving our brain and reducing the rot. There are clear actions that we can use to reduce the rot, and there's lists from The Guardian of WebMD. I've listed them in the show notes or in the description box in YouTube. But that would be less doom scrolling, less multitasking, less double screens, less AI for easy answers. It's also about limiting screen time as well as regular social media and digital breaks, but also sleep, good food, meditation, being in nature. Some of the other aspects that I've thought about is maybe you have played an instrument or wanted to learn one, maybe some Sudoku, some reading, learning a new language, math problems, writing a blog, or just keeping notes by hand in a notebook instead of always typing in your computer. So anything and everything that preserves and challenges our brain, I think is important to work with. Next one would be openly discussing cognitive ability and brain rot when planning who and how gets to participate. And I think it's an uncomfortable topic. I started off exploring this, which is like, well, brain rot people shouldn't be allowed in multi-species processes. And then I was like, yeah, Amelia, but you're one of them. So I keep wondering, like, what would happen if we openly discussed what multi-species work demands cognitively? And also, if you are a researcher in a relevant field, please do some research on it, because it would be so cool to read. But the questions are, is multi-species work for everyone? How can we design different approaches? Are we limiting those who can participate by making it too hard or also too simplistic? Should we limit who can participate? And what to do when practitioners' brains are strained? Or, I have so many questions. And yes, it can be intellectualist at times, but I think it would be such a shame if multi-species became only for the smart or non-brain rotted, brain rot-free people. Then the next one is building processes for people with vastly different cognitive ability and levels of brain rot. What I keep thinking back to is, imagine you're doing a workshop where you have a kindergartner, a 10-year-old, a bachelor's student, a postdoc, and a professor, all with very different cognitive ability and brain rot levels. And I think it's important here to leave out how much a person may or may not know about multi-species or nature, just because a marketing professor, though very expert in his own field, might have very little knowledge about nature or multi-species approaches, but kind of the cognitive capability of that person is very different than that of a bachelor student or a middle schooler or a 10-year-old, you know? So I think it's important to distinguish between the three. So the intellectual capacity, or like how smart and capable a person is, the brain rot or the actual cognitive ability, and then the third one, the knowledge on the topic. So there are three different things. But yeah, all the differently capable people at the same time, all with vastly different expectations and abilities. How do we target and design processes so that all of these participants can engage? Or should they all be at the same table? Should we separate them? How can different participants still be there and have a good process? Would forcing capable people with the brain rotted be useful? And yeah, brain rotted. And I know I've said it a couple of times already. It's a terrible word. It kind of makes me sick. But what would be insulting to people's intelligence or insulting for those with brain rot? I think we really need to kind of explore approaches and how do we work with a brain rot and the lower cognitive capability and navigate people on different spectrums and levels of brain rot. Then exploring whether and how to translate for those with brain rot. And here I have a billion questions, like how do we translate for those? Do we need to translate for those with brain rot, even if they don't care? What if we are the ones with brain rot? And who does the translation? Does the translation require special skills and training? Are multi-species practitioners allowed only to operate on their own intellectual level and brain capacity? So I imagine being a 10th grader needing to explain complex biology to a 3rd grader without pedagogical training while still learning it yourself. To me, that sounds rough. I catch myself thinking that I would absolutely hate doing the translation work all the time. If I need to constantly dumb down my knowledge, expertise, and understanding of this topic and how I act in projects into a brain rot Insta-Reels format, I would go crazy. I would probably quit and never do this job again. So, what is the border of responsibility if someone does not understand you? Is it the practitioner's fault? What if the person is deeply brain rotted? Where is the line? Uh, and what to do with brain rotted, entitled, and opinionated people? Because it's not only that if you're brain rotted and you're like, oh, yeah, maybe I'm a little bit dumb today, or my brain can't follow, but maybe it's my empirical and biased experience, but a lot of those people are also deeply entitled and opinionated, and they think that they know everything about the world. How do you deal with that? Do their opinions matter? Do they not? Do we leave them out? Do we keep them in? So many questions. And then the final one, pretty obvious one, would be the building emotional intelligence, because I think lower cognitive ability also comes a lot with the maybe the emotional outbursts, or just having harder to manage and regulate emotion. So I think emotional intelligence can help us navigate all this. We can start with ourselves, checking how our brain rot makes us feel. Like, do we feel frustrated, apathetic, agitated? Are we filled with compulsive desire to scroll our phones? And I've already talked a bit about emotional intelligence in one of the essays. I have linked it down below, so I won't really go into much depth about it. But yeah, the questions might be, what are the emotional implications of brain rot? How does one navigate people who have it? How does one navigate people who have it when you are the person who has it as well? Again, so many questions. Anyway, this has been a long episode. I just have a couple of closing remarks, no summaries, no nothing. But as I was writing this essay, I had to pivot my own position on the topic, because I came into it with my nose up high, thinking that I'll just unload my frustrations, and there's so many deep fried brain fried people around me. And then while writing it, I was like, yeah, Amelia, but you're one of them. Like, you're not putting the two and two together. So I came in with a us versus them mentality, and then had to put effort into pushing myself to think holistically and to see all angles, including the ones that I didn't want to see. And maybe also for me, this is what Multispecies Digest, the essays that I write, and also this podcast is about pushing myself to break out of simplistic thinking, to step away from doom scrolling, from my chronically online behavior, from just consuming things. And it forces me to really write, to think, to do things that are cognitively challenging for me. So what I walk away myself is the feeling that we're all in this together, and also feeling that this topic is very incomplete. I think there's so many more angles that could be explored and thought about, and I would love to discuss it. If you are maybe discuss it, maybe not one-on-one, but like I just would love to get a group of multi-species practitioners really thinking about it, and that'd be really great. Meanwhile, you'll catch me doing sudokus, forcing myself to read books, avoiding multitasking, also double screens, and I'm now also considering whether I want to retake high school maths and physics just for the cognitive benefits of it. I used to love math, so it's something that I'm like, maybe it's time to go back. If any of this resonated, please like, comment, subscribe. If you think someone might benefit from reading this essay, from watching this episode, listening to this episode, please share it with them. If you have any questions, there's a form where you can leave them as well. And with that, thank you so much for listening, for watching, and I will see you in the next episode of Multispecies Digest podcast.